I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传是一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Good morning or afternoon or evening, everybody, wherever it is you happen to be. Welcome to our September the 30th installment of the Tao Study Group. Once again, I know I say this almost every week, it's just amazing to me that this little group has the reach that it does, the scope that it encompasses. And it's a joy to me to see everybody here. It really and truly is. This is just the most amazing thing that we have the technology available to us to present the teachings with this kind of quality and clarity over some what heretofore has been insurmountable distances. It's a wonderful thing. And even though I program computers for a living, I got to tell you, this stuff just fascinates me on a daily basis anyway. It's just amazing to me that we're able to do the things we're able to do. So anyway, I was perusing the Daodejing as I am wont to do from time to time, actually pretty frequently, and came across chapter 62 in my reading. This actually is one of my favorite chapters. I think this particular chapter of Lao Tzu's teaching is among the more profound and digestible of the teachings in the Daodejing. Still difficult for Westerners to get their heads around because of the way we tend to think about things. But once we get a grip on what this really says, it is remarkably salient in our existence, and it's not really terribly difficult to sort out. What it says is the Tao is the wonder of all things, the treasure of the kind person, the protection of the unkind person. Admirable words can win the public's respect. Admirable actions can improve people. Those who are unkind, how can they be abandoned? Therefore, when crowning the emperor and installing the three ministers, although there is the offering of jade before 4 horses, none of it can compare to being seated in this Tao. Why did the ancients value this Tao so much? Is it not said that those who seek will find, those with guilt will not be faulted? Therefore, it is the greatest value in the world. I've told you all before that earlier on in my spiritual path, I was on my way towards becoming a Southern Baptist minister, part of the Southern Baptist Convention. As Southern Baptists, we were taught that hellfire and brimstone was a literal thing, as was heaven. And further, if we believed in the glorification of heaven by definition, we had to believe in both the devil and hell. We were also taught that there were a number of promises and commitments in the New Testament that would inure upon us if we were saved and baptized. The reason that I did not turn out to be a Southern Baptist minister is because I was never able to live up to the admonitions of the New Testament. Of course, I was just a kid back then, but I still took the process and the teachings and the path seriously, and it troubled me greatly that my human nature seemed to be horribly misaligned with the New Testament. I wasn't a bad guy. It's not bad at all. I was a normal red-blooded teenage male, and as such was perhaps a little more aggressive, a little more interested in girls, a little more adventurous, a little more of a teenager than I am now. And some of those things fell into just plain old bipolar opposition to what the New Testament said. And the New Testament said that if I was saved and baptized, that those parts of my human nature would go away and be replaced by a much holier new man than I was, and that never happened for me. And so I figured that there was either something wrong with the teachings or there was something wrong with me. In either event, I started looking for a different set of answers. I started looking for a set of answers that made sense in my life, something that I could reconcile my basic human nature with, and that would explain either why I couldn't live up to the New Testament standards or why that was okay, or both. That was a process of some years, actually. A lot of them. But when I ran into the real honest-to-goodness, authentic Tao teachings, the stuff that Derek has spent a lifetime working on, I finally understood the answer to both of those questions. In the Tao, there is no concept of universal vengeance. We talk all the time about justice, about universal justice, about the recompense of evil with evil, of doing bad things with punishment and good things with reward. That seems to be a remarkably common sense perspective to living life, but it is not the perspective of the Tao of Heaven. In the Tao, neither the good person nor the evil person is left behind. Rather than some kind of glorification or punishment, in the Tao there are lessons and consequences. It's the action of karma, the universal law of cause and effect. It's not to say that there's no recompense for good or evil behavior. There absolutely is. But that recompense comes along as the natural consequences of our actions and our choices. The Tao itself puts no skin in the game relative to what we decide to do. So we can choose to be as evil as we want to be, or as evil as we're capable of being. And the great Tao will not care. It doesn't put a tick mark next to our name in a book that says this guy's going to hell. What does happen is that the natural consequences of our evil choices and decisions will come around and hit us in the face in their own due time. And most of the time, those consequences do not wait for 2 or 3 lifetimes to come around and get us. They're much more immediate than that. Okay? We do something that is intrinsically evil, and most of the time, the recompense for whatever that evil is waiting to hit us as we turn around to look at what we just did. It is very nearly the concept of instant karma, if you're familiar with the Beatles. That's the action of the Tao of Heaven. Humans create the idea of some manner of divine justice, the punishment of the wicked and the glorification of the good. The Tao itself is impartial. It doesn't recognize the distinction. The Tao is not a deity. It's not a person. It's not a God. It's a set of natural laws or principles that are so large, so all-encompassing, so tremendous in scope and magnitude that it operates as a divine essence. Therefore, it becomes the guide and help of those who follow it and seek it. And it is also the protection and guide of those who do not. There's a tremendous comfort to all people, the good and the evil both. And we have all in our lives at some point in time been both the kind person and the unkind person. We have all been the good person and the evil person. We all have a little closet full of memories in the back of our mind that we absolutely know if anybody else ever saw them, they'd never love us again. We'd be mortified. That's just part of being human. The Tao of Heaven does not care. It doesn't measure that level of goodness or badness. It simply exists. Nothing in the world approaches the impartiality of the Tao of Heaven. Nothing in the world gives so freely of its resources to the good person and the evil person, regardless of their state, like the Tao does. The sun shines, the rain falls, the plants and animals grow and go on about their lives, and all of that happens with absolutely no interference from us whatsoever. In fact, when people interfere in those natural processes, it's usually to the detriment of those natural processes. Our input is not required very largely in the movement of the universe and the earth. Right? It just isn't. So far, we've been responsible for global climate change, an awful lot of pollution, the destruction of tons of habitats, and extinctions of just countless species on this earth. And we have not been punished as a species by the Tao. There's no deity out there getting ready to burn us all alive. But we can very clearly see, if we look, that the consequences of our own actions as a species are coming about in a real hurry. No matter what the politicians say, no matter what anybody believes or doesn't believe, there are measurable impacts to our environment as a result of our actions. Action and consequence, cause and effect. Okay? That's how it works. Only human beings stratify themselves and assign values of greater and lesser to other people. We're the only species on this planet that does that. Within other species, there are hierarchies and pecking orders, but there's never a case where it's okay for instance, one dog to sell another dog to a different dog pack. You don't see turtles leading other turtles around in chains. Okay. Birds don't traffic for sex. They just do what it is within their nature to do. It's only people that create and focus on those differences and humanize or dehumanize one another. But the Tao doesn't participate in that activity or that stratification, thank goodness. No matter how abhorrent we find it, it simply exists. It simply is. Difficult as it may be to wrap our heads around the neutrality of the Tao, that is the starting point of the realization of comfort not physical comfort, but spiritual comfort. The easing of the anxiety of the mind as to the consequences of our lives, and the opportunity to make better choices and decisions to a better outcome, better consequences, and better karma. It isn't just enough to be comforted by the supposition that we're not going to be eternally punished. Hopefully, that leads us to a point where if we are not behaving as we should, we can modify our behavior and bring it into alignment with the Tao itself. In ancient Chinese culture, the offering of jade before four horses, the crowning of the emperor, and the installation of the ministers was something of a big deal. And that offering was an offering of supreme value. It was almost immeasurable worth. It was valuable enough that when the tomb of Qin Huangdi was finally opened, as much of it as has been excavated, one of the things they found was a two-scale replica of the imperial chariot drawn by 4 horses, and it was extremely ornate. Very, very well done. It was a big deal. So when Lao Tzu talks about the crowning of the emperor, the installation of the ministers, and the offering of jade before 4 horses, what he was talking about was something that every person that was around him at that time would have understood and known as being something of supreme value, of ultimate pricelessness, of being something that no average person could ever attain in their lives. And he says the Tao is more valuable than that. The lesson for us in reading this chapter is to understand why a life lived in accordance with these teachings, what Lao Tzu calls being seated in this Tao, has that sort of value. If we look at the teachings and cannot for ourselves establish this singular truth, then we have either more looking to do at the teachings, or perhaps we need to go find a different set of answers. So imagine the most valuable things you possess, whatever that is, whatever it is in your life that you love more than living itself. And then try to imagine something that is more precious than that, something worth giving up everything that you possess for. That's kind of the comparison that Lao Tzu makes here. That if you can consider the most valuable thing you've ever seen in your life, whatever that is, being seated in this Tao is more valuable than that. When the emperor is crowned, by the way, the emperor is us. I have never seen an occasion in the entirety of the Daodejing where Lao Tzu speaks of the emperor where there's not a straight line relationship between the sovereign, the emperor, the king, whoever, and ourselves. I also realize that there's strictly an illiterate comparison made here to a process that people would have seen. But bear in mind that the emperor is us. We're the sovereign of our lives. We're the people who make the decisions and the choices that bring about the karma, positive or negative, either one, that we're going to have to live with once we've done whatever it was we did. So whether we're the kind or the unkind person, whether we see the Tao as a treasure or a protector, or we don't see it at all, it's still going to be there. Impartial, moving, doing what it does, and waiting on us to return to it. But without any emotional involvement at all. It simply is. I think for a lot of people, getting to the point of understanding that the Tao doesn't operate as a personified deity can be one of the most difficult concepts to wrestle with, because from our earliest childhood, we have had ingrained in us the existence of God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. In the West, that is as prevalent as baby teeth. The vast majority of this country is Judeo-Christian in religious makeup, and in any one of oh heavens, hundreds of various sects of the various Protestant dogmas. The things that we grow up with from our earliest childhood tend to stick with us, whether they're true or not. And I'm not here to tell you that the Christian teachings are true or not true. That absolutely is a matter of faith and a decision for everybody to make on their own. For me, didn't quite work. For you guys, maybe it does. And that's okay. But understand that as part of that indoctrination, we have a completely different perspective on heaven, hell, life, and punishment than the Far East does. A whole different concept of yin and yang and balance. Here, that balance is achieved through eternal damnation and retribution, or eternal glorification in somebody's heaven. In the Far East, it is a balance of yin and yang, a lesson. The turning of the wheel, where sometimes we're on top, sometimes we're on the bottom, but most of the time we're either on the way up or the way down. Nobody spends an eternity on any side of the wheel. Simply moving. Is it not said that those who seek will find, those with guilt will not be faulted? Therefore, and parenthetically, the Tao is the greatest value in the world. If we can bring ourselves to free ourselves of the concept of heaven and hell, then whatever happens to us after we die cannot possibly be as bad as we thought it was going to be. If we believe the New Testament, the old gospel wrote in the book of Paul, I'm sorry, it's the book of Romans. Paul was the one speaking. I'm losing my marbles. But it's the old gospel road where he says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And the wages of that sin is death. For it is assigned to man once to die, but after that, the judgment. That's a mighty harsh way of looking at things, but it's what we've all been taught. I am the way and the truth and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Okay. For sure, you guys are absolutely 100% allowed to believe that way if that's what works for you. I'm not going to tell you that you can't or you shouldn't. I find the teachings of Lao Tzu to make a lot more sense and to be a lot less harsh. Could I be wrong? Sure. I reserve the right to be dead wrong. But in what I can observe in nature and in the heavens, this to me sounds more reasonable. Way too often we lose sight of what's really valuable in life while we run around chasing junk. And you can take that statement as being either secular and literal or spiritual and metaphoric. And it works in both cases. This is just a reminder this morning of what's really valuable and why. Our spiritual path doesn't consume anywhere near the time and resources that our secular path does. But maybe it should. And we ought to at least give that path the attention it deserves so that we function the way we should in life. We can take great comfort in the impartiality of the Tao. No matter what it is you think happens after you die, the teachings clearly state that the Tao is not an interested party in the affairs of human beings. And then hopefully we can also strive to be the kind person as we wander down this path of life. There's absolutely nothing wrong with learning the lessons from our past behavior and correcting those mistakes to a better future. That's kind of the process, no matter what your faith is. In any case, the commitment is those who seek will find, and all of us are those who seek. The promise is that one day we will find the answer. Thank you all very much for letting me share with you. Really appreciate it. I hope something I said was useful. Thank you.
Yeah, so this topic is definitely food for thought. So, so people who are listening have definitely come up with quite a few questions. Let me relay the first one to you from Milton. What is the Taoist view on divine grace? And by that I mean perceiving to have received a special favor.
Even though the Tao itself is an impartial actor, what I tell people and what I have had occur over and over and over again in my life and have seen occur in the lives of others who follow these teachings is that there is an awful lot of latitude in the Tao for those who are doing the best they can to learn and follow the teachings. I myself do not understand the mechanism of how and why it happens. I understand the occurrence. And even though I believe with all of my heart that the Tao is not a personified deity, I have had things over and over and over and over again work out to the successful completion of a plan or a goal just because I'm trying to do it in alignment with these teachings. I wouldn't say it's divine grace. I'd say it's more the action of karma, perhaps, the cycle of cause and effect. But Lao Tzu alludes to it in the chapter of which Derek was speaking. What he says is that heaven and earth together in harmony will rain sweet dew when the world holds the Tao. Like I said, it happens to me. It happens to Derek. You can see it working here in the synergies that occur between Derek and myself and Alex and the other presenters. It seems like, for instance, most of the time, we're all talking about something that's related every week, but we never compare notes. Derek never calls me to ask what I'm talking about. I never tell him. He doesn't tell me. We do whatever it is we're doing, and somehow it all seems to hang together in a very cohesive and interrelated way. Those kinds of things just happen all the time in the lives of people who cultivate these teachings. And while I can't ascribe it to anybody that's personified, I can absolutely tell you it happens. Call it whatever you want. Derek, would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. One thing that I like to say to everyone, and this has widespread implication to just about everyone that I encounter, is that when they talk about strange things that are occurring, synchronicities, interesting coincidence with somebody else, I like to let them know that I see those as signposts. on the path, signposts on the path of the Tao. So if they do see those amazing events occurring in their lives, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They're an indication you're still headed the right direction.
That's a very good sign. Whatever, yes. Conversely, if they have seen those signs for a while, but then they stop seeing them, then I would very seriously sit down and review what I'm doing, or what is the difference between what I'm doing now versus what I did before when I was seeing those strange signs all the time, and I would try to get back to the right path.
Absolutely.
So Bill, also on the topic of karmic consequences, I have a great insight here from Barry, who talks about the issue of slavery, the more general issue, not just among human beings, but also scientists have noted that there's enslavements in the animal kingdom as well. So observation from Barry is that any forceful control of people is very resource consuming and bears such consequences that it is clear that in the case of human beings, it is extremely against the Tao.
I agree.
Yeah, and I would, I think that's a great insight. I would further expand a little bit to say it's not just, forceful control of other people. I even see the same phenomenon occurring when it's not an attempt to control, but just interference, just minding someone else's business instead of your own business. Even that can get you into high intensity resource consumption that is really not worthwhile.
True. And when you meddle, no matter what you do, it's wrong.
And I always like to qualify that by saying that, listen, parents, you still have a duty to your kids. Before they learn better, you do need to be very active in their lives.
You shouldn't have to say that one, but yeah, I'm with you.
Well, it's the same with teachers as well. There's a point in time when the students or the disciple or the pupil, has mastered the subject to a sufficient degree that they can be on their own. But before that, the master is responsible for the guidance, responsible for keeping them on the right track, and to pull them back on the right path when they stray away. And that I would characterize that as a different thing than enslavement or meddling.
Right. But in that situation, the students asked to be where they are.
Yes, and there's an implicit request from the students or the disciple to learn, to master a particular craft. So it's not you are what I'm trying to say is you are not when you decide to quote unquote interfere in that fashion, you are actually doing so in honoring the request.
Precisely.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜班一鞠躬。Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.